Drop some water.
Scared of some water to stop playing football.
Yeah.
Rolling around in dirt,
Breaking necks.
sweating and farting.
No, nobody's breaking your neck. We're gonna be careful not to take any.
That's farting too.
In your suits. What?
In the bags.
Say, oh, no, I'll be farting.
Okay, so
Jose, put the bag.
No, they be farting. You look like you be farting.
I'll be at practice, man.
Jose, put the
Farting in the
bag.
game?
I'm gonna start with 2A. We're gonna start with 2A. I know we didn't get the last problem done, but that's all right. The short period of the day, we gotta get through some of this stuff. So we're gonna start with 2A, and it says solve using
I'm so silly.
square roots. So does it make sense to you that you will just square root both sides?
Yes.
Alright, so here we go. What's the square root of 4x squared? 2x. Be careful. What's the square root of 25? Not just 5, but plus or minus 5. Whenever you take the square root, you guys, whenever you take the square root of both sides, you have to put a plus or minus on one side or the other. Okay? There's got to be two answers. Think about it. Isn't the square root of 9 3 or negative 3? So we got to get that plus or minus in there. And I don't like to put it with my variable. I usually put it with the other side. But you have to have it in there. So then we'll divide by 2, and x is plus or minus 5 halves. That's easy. We don't need a calculator for that, do we? It's pretty easy. What about this one now? We're supposed to do the same thing with that one, can we? Yeah. If we square root both sides, what's going to happen to this side?
It's just going to be x minus 3.
It's just going to be x minus 3. Because when you square root something squared, doesn't that cancel with that?
No.
So all we have left is the x minus 3. When you square root a perfect square, you just get the thing. And then over here, once again, plus or minus 5.
Do you need to simplify it down to?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not done yet. We got more to do. So then when I add 3 over, I added my 3 to the other side. That says 3 plus or minus 5. So what are my answers? 3 plus 5 is
8.
8. And 3 minus 5 is negative 2. So your answers are 8 and negative 2. Any problem that starts out with a squared in it, look at the original problem and it has a squared. Any problem that starts with a squared, here's your lanyard.
Sorry, I took my sweat.
Does the rule say when you take your sweatshirt off?
No.
You don't. Any equation that starts with an x squared or has an x squared in it is going to have 2 answers. Okay? 2 answers. All right, let's look at the next one. Oh my, what about this guy? Maya, what do you think?
Huh?
What do you think?
Distribute first?
Well, you gotta be careful here. Because of that squared, we can't really distribute. Now, if we FOIL this out, then we can distribute. But then we're gonna have a bigger mess. Our job is to solve with square roots. So what do you think you might want to do first, Josh?
Could you move the 3 over to?
Bingo, let's get rid of that 3, great idea. So when we divide both sides by 3, now it looks like that. Does that problem look like this one looked before I square rooted it? Right? Now it looks just the same. So let's square root both sides. Now there is going to be a little bit of difference. You already see what it is. right? What's this gonna be? What's the square root of x minus 4 squared? X minus 4. And what about this?
Are we just?
Just gonna leave it plus or minus the square root of 3. Remember, you have to put that plus or minus in there. So just like you put it here, when you took the square root of 25, you're gonna put it here to the square root of 3. And then we still need to, we're solving for x, so we're gonna move our 4 over. So 4 plus or minus the square root of 3. What do you think about that?
Are we able to go further or no? Well, technically,
What do you mean, Joseph? Help me out there.
I know there is a square root of 3, but that would be that would be an imperfect.
I would have to do that on my calculator, yeah. And we're not gonna do that. Now, what we do have here, oh shoot, I just erased this. This one was x minus 3 equals plus or minus 5. So we did 3 plus 5 and got 8, and 3 minus 5 and got negative 2. Now we can do that with this one, except it's not gonna combine. So x is 4 plus root 3, and that's it. You can't do anything else with that. Or x is 4 minus root 3. Now, in my world, that's a waste of time because it didn't help me with anything. So I am perfectly okay if you are comfortable leaving it like this. These do not combine. So there's really no point in
At this
splitting
time,
them.
we need student council and anyone else involved in assembly to report to
Is
the
that you?
Welch Activity Center. Thank you.
She's gonna go hop, skip around. Okay, so this one, however, this one has to be written like this because these two things do combine. All right, everybody see the difference?
So bad.
So this one, you have to combine, this one you can leave like this if you wish, okay? All right, one more. What do you want to do with this guy, letter D?
X plus 1, 2x minus.
Square root it?
So we're gonna square root. Now, I want to talk about this for a second, because over here, when our problem looked like this, Josh said we need to divide both sides by 3, and he was right on target. That's the best thing to do. Are we going to be able to divide those sides by 2 in this problem? No, because it's actually part of the parentheses. So if it's outside, we'll go ahead and get rid of it. But if it's inside, we're stuck with it. So we'll take the square root of both sides. What's the square root of this? 2x plus 1. And what's that going to equal?
4 plus or minus.
Plus or minus 4. Now, do you think I should split that up into 2 equations like I did this one? Should I split that up? Yes, because aren't you going to be able to simplify it?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and just do it right now. I'm going to say 2x plus 1 equals positive 4. Or 2x plus 1 equals negative 4. And then I'll do my arithmetic. So I'll subtract 1 and divide by 2. So it looks like one of my answers is going to be 3 halves. And then the other one is going to be negative 5 halves.
Yes.
All right, we've done 4 problems by taking the square root of both sides. Everybody comfortable with that process? And everybody understands if there's a radical left, then you don't need to do any simplifying. But if there's no radical left, then you are expected to come up with the numbers. Okay? All right. Number 3, A, solve by completing the square. All right. Who remembers anything about this? Yes. Aiden?
Start with 2 parentheses, 2 separate ones, and then X.
Oh, just hang on a second. What Aiden is doing is certainly not wrong, okay? Guys, if you're walking down the hallway and you find this problem just laying there, you can solve it any way you want. And what Aiden wants to do is this. This is called factoring. And he says, I'm gonna figure out what's the right combination of numbers that'll make this all happen. And Aiden, do you know what that combination of numbers will be?
7 and 1.
So
Negative
7 and 1,
Negative 7.
-7, +1. So the answers would be -1 and 7 is okay, you've done that over and over and over again. This is called solving by factoring. Are there any downsides to solving by factoring?
Not bad, no.
Huh?
Not bad.
Is it possible for there to be an equation that you can't factor?
Oh, absolutely. What if I made this a 5?
Yeah.
Now, does that mean the problem has no answers? Oh no, it has 2 answers. They're just not gonna be found by factoring, right? So that's why we have these other methods. Factoring is awesome. It's what you start out learning in Algebra 1, and you do it again in Algebra 2, because factoring is important. It's an important skill. But it doesn't always work. So let's go back to the directions. I'm gonna keep these answers because we know these are the answers to the question. And again, if you're on your own, you solve it however you want. There is nothing wrong with this, except I'm supposed to be completing the square. All right, so with that in mind, does anybody remember anything about completing the square? Step 1. Move that number to the other side of the equation. I know that's counterintuitive, but that's what you gotta do. Because we are going to turn this side of the equation into a perfect square. Like we had in these other problems, we're gonna make that a perfect square. The 7 does not fit the mold. All right, so it's out. I am gonna add a number in place of that 7. Instead of 7, I'm gonna add a number that will make this a perfect square. Does anybody, starting to look familiar, does anybody remember how we find that number?
Divide the 6 by 2 and minus 3.
You take half of this number, divide it by 2, so that would give me 3, and then I square it, and that gives me 9. So let's talk about that again. Whatever this X number is here in the middle number, take half of it, divide it by 2, and then square it. Do not look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. You have done this before. Take half of this number. I hope you remember your place better than you remember your completing the square.
I've done sometimes. Like that place. That's right.
Half of 6 is 3, squared is 9. Make sure you add it to both sides. Now this side's gonna be 16. How does this break down? It's supposed to be something squared. Any thoughts about what's in there? X minus
3.
3, yeah, there you go, X minus 3. Kids, if you really aren't getting this, it's really making sense, it's always gonna start with X. Whatever this sign is gonna be this sign, so if that's a minus, it's gonna be a minus, if it's a plus, it's gonna be a plus. And how did you get that 9? You squared 3. square root both sides. So x minus 3 equals plus or minus 4. Is this one I'm gonna have to simplify? Yeah, because there's no radical. So x equals 3 plus or minus 4. Move that 3 over to the other side. What's 3 plus 4? What's 3 minus 4? Those are the answers we got before, right? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh my gosh, Mrs. Ford, why would I go through all that crap when I can just do this? And you're right. Why do we have to go through all this? Because you can't always do that. So you gotta have a backup plan, and this is your backup plan. All right, let's try the next one.
Does it matter if you go over?
Okay. So now, let's look at the next one and see if you remember. I know your minds are elsewhere, folks. I get it. But this is math class and you have work to do. So let's see if you can remember what we did a minute ago. Titus, my friend, my core partner. What do you think we should do first?
The parentheses with the x and x equals 0.
Okay, remember, I'm doing this process.
Oh.
So look back, here was our original problem. What was the very first thing I did? What was the very first thing I did? I moved my 7. So what am I moving here? The 2. So x squared plus 8x equals 2. Leave the empty space. We're getting rid of the bad number, and we're gonna put in the good number. Miss Miles.
I just have a question about like another way to do it. Are we allowed to split the middle?
What does that mean?
It's like, well, it's more like when there's
Oh, you mean factor by grouping?
yes.
Yeah, no,
When
that's
it's
still factoring.
When it's like a
Yes,
number in front.
Yes, so those are factoring techniques and they're perfectly okay. So you are not allowed to do that when the directions say complete the
Okay.
square. If the directions say factor, you can absolutely do that.
Okay.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, but we are today, our focus is on completing the square. When we have a test, the test question will be complete the square. All right. So here we go. We're gonna add something to both sides. Oh, I heard somebody say it already. 16. How did we get 16? He's right. How did he get it? Half of 8 divided by 2, 8 divided by 2, and then square. So the half of 8 is 4, square is 16. That's what gets added to both sides. Now, this side of the equation, with the x's, will always be x something squared, always. It's called completing the square. You're making a square. This side I can just add and I get 18. Now tell me what goes in here. Plus 4, absolutely perfect. That's what goes in there. X always, plus because that's a plus, and 4 because 4 squared is 16. Okay, so now what do we do? Square root. So x plus 4. Very good. Did you do that without your calculator? Good girl. Square root of 18. So she says, I better break that down. So 3 root 2. Now, is this one I'm gonna want to simplify or not? Right. Nope. So I'm gonna move the 4 over, and move it over, And I always, and it's kind of a habit, I always write, I subtract 4. I always put -4 plus or minus 3 root 2. But if you put plus or minus 3 root 2 minus 4, that's the same thing. The order doesn't matter. Okay? All right, one more completing the square. Take a look at this one and tell me what is different about it. Oh my, it's got a 2 in front of it. Guess what? You can't have a 2 in front of
I
it.
can't see very well.
So the first thing we're gonna do is divide everything by 2. So then what does my equation look like? X squared minus 10x plus what? 2 equals 0. So if there is a leading coefficient, we call this a leading coefficient. If there is one, gotta go. Okay, what's the next thing I have to do?
Wait, so we don't put that in parentheses and the 2 in front, and just, it's gone?
It's gone. It's gone.
That's moving.
Aaron, what do I do now?
Factor? I mean, not factor.
No, remember, we're completing the square, so
Oh,
look
right,
back
right, right.
here. What was the first thing we did in this problem?
Subtract 2.
Exactly, we're gonna move that 2 to the other side. And when we move it, we're gonna go ahead and leave the space there because we know our next step is to find the special number that will make this a perfect square. That's our goal.
25.
Jose says 25. What do you
Negative.
think?
No.
What is it?
25.
It's 25. Jose, it's always gonna be positive, my friend, because you're squaring it. So half of -10 is -5. But what happens when you square it?
Negatives cancel out.
The negatives cancel, it's just positive. So this is always gonna be a plus. This one is always gonna be a plus, you're always gonna be adding. Okay, so this is gonna be 23 on this side. Tell me what my perfect square is.
X minus
X minus 5. Beautiful. Okay, now what? Square root both sides. So I will have X minus 5 equals what?
Square root of 23.
Plus or minus the square root of 23. And then what's X gonna equal? 5 plus or minus the square root of 23, or plus or minus 23 plus 5, whichever way you wanna write it. And you're done. There's no more combining or anything to do. Okay. All right. Solve using the quadratic formula. Wait a minute. Quadratic equations are equations like this that have a squared in them. There are 3 ways to solve quadratics. To solve x squared equations. There's 3 ways. You can factor, which is what you guys were talking about first. That doesn't always work, so we need to just come to grips with that. That isn't always gonna work. We can complete the square, which is what we were just doing, and it always works. Sometimes it's messy and yucky, and I don't wanna do it that way, but it will always work. The third way to solve an x squared or a quadratic equation is to use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula also always works. It always works. these two always work. So you kind of pick the one that feels best to you. Anybody remember the quadratic formula? I'll get you started. X equals.
X equals B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus A for 4 AC? Is it, or is it plus 4
Yes.
AC? Divided by 2.
So negative B, first of all, we gotta have
yeah.
negative B plus or minus the square root of
B.
B squared
4 AC.
minus 4AC, and the whole shebang is divided by
Q.
A, 2A. So most of you remember pieces of that. We need to remember that. Okay, so write that down, make sure you got that written down. And to be honest, I think the quadratic formula is my favorite way of doing problems because it's just plug and chug. It's really pretty mindless, you don't even really have to think about it. So x squared plus 8x minus 9. I know that I could factor this, and I know I could complete the square, but I'm not doing that because the directions say use the formula. So what's my A? I need an A in my formula. What's my A? 1. It's right here. 1. What's my B? 8. 8. Right there. And what's my C?
-9.
-9. Very good. Keep the sign. All right, so let's plug everything into our formula and see what comes out. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B. B squared. So B squared will be 64 minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is -9. Guys, you've got to keep track of these negatives. And then the whole thing is going to be divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, is there anybody that has a question about what I've written so far? This is the last problem we're going to do today, guys. Hang with me. You got this? Okay, so now we got to start cleaning things up. Now, I need you to pay attention. There are 2 negatives under here, right? So that's going to become a positive. Because you are taking a -4 times a 1 times a -9. 36. And it's plus because 2 negatives multiply together. This is all multiplied here. Make a positive. What's 64 plus 36? Oh, well, that's nice. Because what's the square root of 100? 10. So I have -8 plus or minus 10 over 2. It is 2A.
Oh, that's 1.
A is 1, so yes.
8 plus or minus 5.
You gotta be careful. -8 plus 10 divided by 2.
What are you reducing?
We're gonna reduce in a second. -8 minus 10 divided by 2. Would everybody agree that can be split up? So what's -8 plus 10? 2. And 2 over 2 is 1. So one of your answers is
1.
1. What's -8 minus 10? -18 over 2. So your other answer is -9. There are the answers.
Sorry, this interruption again. This is just a reminder that all students should keep their backpacks and their phones in the classroom. Again, phones and backpacks should remain in the classroom. If you are a bus rider, you can bring your backpack. Please keep your phone in your backpack. Thank you.
Okay, so first of